So, Valve has just done a very exciting group of announcements, and I will run through those announcements in the same order as they did in their announcement because, well, I think it goes in a quite nice trajectory. The first thing they announced was a new Steam controller, of all things, almost 10 years after the first one, and I'm very excited for it. So, for anyone who's seen the Steam Deck, you know it's got the controls and then the thumbsticks. Then they've got their trackpads, which is a thing they had on the first Steam controller. That sort of was very revolutionary for sort of mouse-based games and being able to play them at a couch on a controller. They've brought them back, but they've positioned them more like the Steam Deck's controls. So it's very much clearly they're trying to position us as the same kind of ecosystem. It's got all the same controls. And the one thing I was worried about, I think Jamie brought this up in a chat we were having at one point, was the positioning of the trackpads. I was worried about the sticks being too high up, but I think from seeing just videos of people holding it, it looks like they've taken pretty much the area that would be underneath the sticks, where it's just empty space where the two sides come down, and just whacked the trackpads there. So I think it.
Yeah, so my kind of take on it was it looks like they've taken a controller and then instead of moving the joysticks higher, what they've actually done is added a section in the empty space where the trackpad is, which is what you were saying. My only concern was palm rejection, but as we kind of had a conversation in over text and whatnot about this, but it's very possible that palm rejection might, if there's, because they on the thumbsticks themselves they have touch capacitiveness.
Yeah,
Some
this is the thing I was going to get onto, but we'll talk about palm rejection first. But I think I pulled out my PlayStation controller for reference. So I wanted to see, like, if I'm holding the sticks here, right? You got to think if the touchpads are here, I'm not. My palms aren't really going where, because you got to look at, if you look at the photo, the controller sort of goes the handles, then it goes down a bit like this, and this is where the touchpads are. So I think you will be safely above the touchpads when you're using the joysticks.
Right. Okay.
On the placement. I don't think I mean unless you're playing like with your hands like this, I don't think your palms are going to be causing an issue on the touchpads. I mean, people who have used a Steam Deck can probably correct me on that because it does seem to be very similar placement to the Steam Deck. Jamie's gone. Yeah. The controller, what really excited me about James bought a controller.
You see, this is a Wii U controller for context. It's the only one I had to hand. But I tend to game like this, where my palms are very much covering. They might just, I mean, I guess they'd be here.
Yeah, so I was gonna say they'll be indented a bit though. So I think it'll probably be something you'd have to, if you were noticing it, it's probably something you could adjust your grip to get around as well though. It's not like.
Yeah, I mean, I reckon just about here might just clip it. But to be honest, I could kind of game like this and get away from that problem.
Yeah.
So I might not be an issue as much as I originally thought during the announcement.
It's going to be quite a big controller, isn't it?
I like big controllers. That's like I said, I like showing up my PS5 controller, which is probably the thickest controller I've ever owned. I have big hands. I really like a chunky controller. That's a bigger controller.
This is a Wii U, and because you were just saying about the same thing on Steam Deck, but I have noticed when I hold this, my palms are actually well clear of where the touch would be.
It does remind me, maybe showing my age a bit, of the standard or the XL size original Xbox controllers.
Oh, the Duke!
They were just absolutely huge. There was no chance you were going to be able to hold that correctly.
To be fair, I think
that's now a Steam Deck controller.
Yeah, it reminds me of. Did anyone see that guy who made Steam Deck controllers? That were pretty much just the two sides of the Steam Deck, like that, like a Switch controller. Because it reminds me a bit of those, but it looks a little more made by Valve. Yeah, I think the one thing. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I think the one thing that did excite me with this controller is it seemed they do in a similar thing to what sort of more Nintendo and PlayStation do with their controllers, but even better is it doesn't feel like they've cut any corners with this controller. This feels like anything you might want in a controller is in there. It's got its gyro, it's got capacitive touch on the thumbsticks, it's got paddle buttons on the back, all of them reassightable. It's got, what was the thing I was really excited about that it had? bollocks, I've forgotten now. The charging puck is really cool because I always forget to charge my controller. It's its wireless adapter, and you put the controller on it, and it starts charging magnetically.
It's nice that this is a first-party option because I
Yeah.
know I had Wii controllers back yonks ago and Xbox 360 controllers that had these third-party kind of docks and things, and they worked solid 20% of the time. They were always just a bit crap. They'd run out quickly. They wouldn't always charge. So it's nice to have a first-party option for the controller to have a dock where you can charge it, and it should just work in theory.
They also have something I've not seen in a first-party controller option before, which is magnetic thumbsticks. Which I won't pretend to be an expert on it because I'm not particularly, but it's a technology in thumbsticks that's even more sort of reliable than even Hall effect sensors, which for years were like the most reliable joysticks. These were the ones that people were replacing the joysticks and their Joy-Cons with in order to prevent Joy-Con drift. So these are like pretty much going to be the most anti-drift first-party controllers pretty much we've ever seen. And yeah, I realize I'm talking about a controller for a long time, so I do apologize, but I'm very excited about it because that's the specific kind of nerd I am.
I'll be very interested to see like what iFixit claim the like repairability of these things are.
I am curious. I think I might be misremembering, but I think Valve might be working to sell replacement parts. I know they did with the Steam Deck. I'm pretty sure with iFixit. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go on to
It's
do
not
that
on there
with
yet,
iFixit.
but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, they're yet to. We'll get onto this, but they're yet to even announce the price, so it'll be a
Right.
bit before.
Fair enough.
So yeah, and Valve mentions your Steam controller can be very well used alongside a Steam machine. Oh yes, Steam machines are back too. So if anyone remembers, about 10 years ago, Valve tried a little project called Steam Machines. Matt looks like he's having PTSD nightmares.
No, I remember it happening. I've never used one.
Steam
But-
machines were basically. So we've made it finally to SteamOS 3, and that's where SteamOS finally sort of caught its legs, became great, and Valve started pushing Linux compatibility. SteamOS 1 was what the original Steam machine ran 10 years ago. It was basically Valve tried to make a console, but it also wasn't a console. It was a very weird thing where they were made by, like, there was a bunch of Alienware different ones, and they were all different specs, and they were practically just ITX PCs running Valve's flavor of Linux that didn't really do game compatibility that well 10 years ago. But now Valve's brought it back, and it's pretty much just, well, it's a box. It is literally a cube. If you look at a photo of it, here's one on the screen. Thanks, Cameron. It's a cube, and it runs SteamOS, and it's using what they describe as a semi-custom AMD GPU and an AMD CPU, because I mean AMD Linux compatibility, and apparently they've worked quite closely with AMD on the driver, but it looks to be a quite powerful Linux-based console, basically. I think what Valve have done quite well is they've sort of secretly built an ecosystem. In that they had the Steam Deck, and now they're launching the Steam Machine, they're launching the Steam Frame, which we'll get onto, and they've kind of just went, oh, you're already in this ecosystem though, because you already own thousands of pounds worth of games on that will automatically be installable, usable on this console, which I think is just great. And sorry, go.
Pretty cool. And I mean, I think I saw a claim that the Cube is like 6 times more GPU power than the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Which
is
a fair amount, especially if you're doing 1080p on that's going to be a fair amount of horsepower.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I assume like they claim it can do 4K 60 with little bits of like not DLSS, whatever AMD's DLSS upscale is. FSR, that's the one, yeah. With that, which also just means it'll be a honking great 1080p game machine, which is probably what most people will end up using it for, I suspect. And what I find quite interesting, as well as they sell it as, oh, you could also use it as a desktop PC and run all your favorite apps on it. Which I now go, wait, is it? Guys, I think it's finally happened. Is 2026 the year of the Linux desktop?
No.
They've just if it's as long as it's got a browser, and the browser is presumably Chrome.
Might be Firefox, given
Might be
it's...
Firefox. Okay, but they've made a competitor to the Chrome box that Google could never be bothered with.
Yeah, so it just seems like a relatively competent small form factor PC that runs SteamOS, and that seems interesting. It also has a Steam do you remember when I mentioned the little Steam controller charging puck that does its own 2.4 GHz connection? It has that built in, so you can connect their first party controllers to their first party machine. But yeah, and the last thing they announced was was a Steam Frame, which is Valve's new VR headset. We haven't seen a VR headset out of Valve since the Index in, I want to say, 2020, because that was around the same year Half-Life Alyx came out. They released it alongside, and I was unsure about a couple of things with the Steam Frame going into it, because it's the first Valve headset to do inside-out tracking, which what that means is instead of having external sensors, as people have probably seen, where you put them sort of like on stands or on your walls and they point in and they track where the headset is, it uses cameras on the headset pointing outwards to track where the controllers are, where the headset is in 3D space. The main benefit to that has always been convenience. You can just walk into a room, put the headset on, and use it. You don't need to set up anything external to the headset. The issue with it has been sort of reliability, especially with like blind spots. So let's say you're playing an archery game and you pick a bow out of the quiver. Well, you see, you're right behind your head here, and sometimes it would lose tracking when you place it behind your head because all the sensors are on the headset, which is on the front of your face. So that was one thing I was really interested to see what Valve got around that, because Valve has been very much more on the stability side. But from like looking at reviews of people who have had hands-on of the headset, apparently it's really impressive for inside-out tracking, which has me somewhat excited, because if they've gotten rid of most of the stability downsides, well, now it is just more convenient. So Valve's like the one company I actually trust to get it right, because Meta's offerings in the past couple of years have just not been particularly there, and they're also Meta. The other thing that they that it was really interesting to me about this headset was the wireless streaming. So they use a specific they sell a specific, I don't know if it actually comes with a headset or if it's an external accessory. I'll have to double check that. Basically a Wi-Fi 6 dongle that does act as a Wi-Fi 6 router practically. You plug into USB, and because it uses a 6 gigahertz band, it's able to go around a lot of interference, because there's not a lot of consumer hardware that uses the 6 gigahertz band at the moment. The one last thing I'll touch on that they did that looks really interesting with it is a tech called foveated streaming. So this is close to something we've seen on the PlayStation VR 2, what they used was foveated rendering on the PlayStation. That what this is, it has little eye trackers that track where you're looking on the screen, and foveated rendering would basically take where you're looking on the screen, render that in full quality, and then use lesser quality for the bits in your peripheral vision. And Valve Streaming does a similar thing in that when you're streaming from a desktop, it will look at where you're looking and render and stream that at full bit rate, but lower the bit rate to the outside bits in your peripheral to save on the bandwidth. I say when you're streaming from a device, because Marks, maybe you can jump in on this a bit, because I know you would mention it, but it's actually got an ARM64 PC in the headset, which, looking at the size of the headset, is really impressive. Yeah, they've shown demos of it running Windows native. It's an ARM CPU running Arch, well, SteamOS, which is based on Arch. And what's really impressive is they've been talking about doing. They've put a lot of work into an open source project that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head. Whoops. I'll look at it and I'll put a little insert where you can edit in what I name what the name of the project is. That's basically, it's a bit like Wine and stuff, but for translating like x86 to ARM. And they've been integrating that into like pretty much a second layer of Proton. And they've shown off Windows native, Windows only x86 games running almost flawlessly on Arch on ARM on the headset. I think Hades 2 was when I saw they were running through both these translation layers. Still, I mean, on a onboard CPU at a usable frame rate and resolution. I just think that's really impressive. Marks, you had something you put in about ARM and Arch. I didn't have enough time to look into
Well,
that.
it was more that ARM support for Arch from the upstream Arch project and is basically a bit of a shit show.
Mhm.
So I'm interested to see how Valve have handled the availability of Arch packages for ARM64, whether they've contributed to some of the other various projects that have gone on to add Arch builds, ARM builds for the Arch packages, particularly as some of them have sort of fizzled out and run out of steam, or they've just done it themselves.
Steam. My assumption is they've done it themselves. Whether or not we see that upstreamed anywhere is
Well,
your
the real
best guess,
question
but
is whether the Arch project is going to be willing to take it.
that's true. Yeah, part of me feels like it's more the ARM support might be what they have bolted on top as SteamOS rather than upstreaming it to Arch. That might be part of the SteamOS flavor is their in-house added Arch, not Arch support, ARM support might be what they sell as part of that package. And that brings me sort of back onto this Steam machine briefly, because that's what I'm interested in. Will we finally get a general purpose install ISO for SteamOS? They've been promising it since the Steam Deck came out, that we'll finally get a SteamOS image you can install anything. Because we have a SteamOS image. The problem is it's only meant to be used as a recovery image for the Steam Deck. And now that they're bringing out more hardware with SteamOS on, it makes me think maybe they'll finally get around to actually releasing that image. I hope they do, because I would personally love to run SteamOS on my desktop right now, if I could. So, I don't know, maybe if they do that, maybe it'll finally be the year of the Linux desktop. All your games run here now. There's a whole ecosystem here running it. It's happening. I'm telling you, the 2026, mark my words, it's the year of the Linux desktop.
It's not going to happen.
It's going to happen, Mark.
It's not going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It will happen once audio works.
Audio does work. It
Beautiful.
does. Look, I'm sorry. I have had genuinely less issues with Linux audio with Pipewire than I have with Windows audio.
That's not saying much.
Look, you said it works, and it works. In fact, it works more than what I'm trying to convince people to switch off of.